Hello, everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution, and we are reading The Storm Before the Calm by Neil Donald Walsh. And Linda, our very wonderful reader, will get us up to speed on what page we're going to be on, but we're also going to discuss some of the things that we read about last week. So, Anne, did you want to go first, or Linda, do you want to say anything before we get
Well,
started with that?
No, you had a paragraph that you had questions about, Nanette. So let's start with Anne, I think.
Okay.
well, I think the thing that I was talking about being that, I'm in the United States, was that what I was troubled about was something that happened to me with a good friend. But it has to do with what's going on between Trump and Biden. But what was disturbing to me is I try to see both sides of everything. I thought the day that we did that discussion about finding all the things that were right about Trump was very interesting, to look at it from another standpoint, rather than what your mind says about things. But what was concerning is when you really look at it, it's like 48% is for Trump and 52% is for Biden. What was disturbing to me is that the country is truly severely divided in half. And it's like it's become an us or them, or you or me reality. And what happened was that I had a spiritual friend who's really open-minded. We're working for the unity, to be in the love and all this. And basically they said, well, if you're not for Trump, you're a traitor or something like that. And they didn't want anything to do with me anymore or to talk to me. It was like their whole reality was shifted to this reality that would be very shocking if any one of us kind of went that far on the pole to the left or the right or something like that. And we talk here about the unity and the love and coming together and what we need to do. And we're reading these books on how we can change and everything. And I'm stumped because the reality right now is such that we are truly divided in a way that I've never seen or felt or known before. It's almost like a civil war, like where the North and the South were fighting against each other. I just don't know any thoughts about how do we come to the unity? How do we come to accept, even when our president isn't even willing to admit defeat? What are they going to have to do? Drag him out of there in the end? I don't know. It just, something about what's going on is asking us to look at something on a much deeper level. And that's what I'm approaching, is what is really going on here with human hearts and with, I don't know, and you can take it, somebody can take it wherever they want to. Thank you.
And I really appreciate your sharing, because you're right. You're exactly right. And at the same time, what we probably don't all realize is we've always been divided like this. If you go and you look at Wikipedia for the list of presidents and look at the percentages, it's very rare that any president gets 50% of the vote. And that's going back years and years and years and years and years. Like, if you look at the whole list, it's very rare that you have an exceedingly popular president. I think Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the most popular president, and he served 3 terms. And so this division, the reason I bring that up is that this isn't new. This is humanity's challenge that we've been living with our entire time in form on Earth, and definitely in this country. So it's something much bigger. It's something much bigger than this election or this president or this country even. It's, what are we doing here? That's what my takeaway is. What's happening is life is trying to show us once again that we're not in harmony, that we're not being who and what we came here to be. And it's just one more opportunity to wake up. I'm going to put in the chat box this article I found. And it's about a game designer it's a game designer who has written an analysis of what's happening with QAnon. And then the other thing I think, Nanette, I was going to mention is I think that once you start the recording and you say the book title's name, we should put the year, and we should make it clear that this is not anything about QAnon. Because just since the time we had this discussion in book club a couple of months ago, between then and now, if you go like into Amazon and you put the title of this book name in without the author name, there are a whole bunch of books now with the similar title. And so we don't have anybody visiting us today in book club that doesn't belong here or thinks they're in the wrong place or thinks they're somewhere that they're not. But we probably need to remind people. The thing that's interesting about this article, and it's a very long article, and I really highly recommend it. I don't want to read the whole thing. I want to just mention the very beginning of it, because what he does is he gives an example of how gaming works, like gaming design. You design a game, and then you watch what happens when people play it, right? And in the very beginning, he gives the scenario of, you're in a dark dungeon and you're supposed to find a tool. And there happen to be some random pieces of wood on the floor. And what happened was that these people decided that the pieces of wood were an arrow pointing to the wall, and they were going to start using the tools that they had found in the room to break the wall down, when that wasn't any part of the gameplay at all. So the article is about how people, and especially when you get together and you've got several people trying to troubleshoot or figure something out, how collectively you can end up with a decision that makes sense to you. It makes sense to all of you, and it seems to be the right thing, and yet you're completely wrong. And that's what's happened with this cult, right? And so just to go back to what Anne was saying, we are being given the biggest gift humanity's ever been given in terms of an opportunity to awaken to oneness and wholeness. And I share your quandary as to how that happens. Over.
Yes, I would like to comment something. And it was one sentence, one little thing that was in the last chapter. Oh, now I've lost it. We have created a society in which an outer race is more important than the human race. And the human race, for being human, really, it is the oneness beyond that. We can see the oneness in each other and go from there and create from there and build societies from there. And that is not what is going on either in Sweden or other places in right. Politics. It's completely different. So for me, that is so important that's why I wrote this thing. Unconditional oneness is fundamental for unconditional love to exist. And we are granted the life, but take it for granted without being united. It's just causing so much suffering for humanity. We can, I mean, is it my thing to solve it? No, it's too much for one person. It needs this connection and higher frequency. I'm sure that there are a lot of people today who have this energy, but how we connect with each other so that we can uplift and heal this separation, that is for me the most important. That was what came to me after our last reading, that sentence, and that I agree with what you said, Linda. That's it's a very special time.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah.
Thank
So the quote that Bima is referring to is on page 194. It's the highlighted quote. We have created a society in which an auto race is more important than the human race. And what he was mentioning here is that in America, all of our legislators take donations from corporations, and so really, when they're on the floor of the Senate, they should be wearing outfits very much like car racers that have the emblems and the badges of all the various people that have given them money. Then we might be more honest, because then they'd be standing there at a podium arguing a piece of legislation for a drug company, and you would know that, Faisal or whoever gave them money. And so separating money out of our process and our government is becoming more and more important. And really, the answer to this for all of us is we heal ourselves, right? If each individual person on the planet dedicated themselves to healing themselves, to learning what their triggers were and dealing with them and not allowing themselves to become triggered. Being able to identify what hurts and know where it came from and be able to comfortably talk about it. None of these things are things that people are doing right now on an individual, everybody basis. Some of us are doing it, but everybody needs to do it. That's how we heal the planet. We don't heal the planet, right? We heal ourselves, and that heals the planet. Nanette?
I have a quick. What chapter did we read last time? Because this thing I'm using doesn't have page numbers.
23. We read chapter 23 last week.
Okay, I'm going to have to look for a minute. Mary, were you going to say something?
Yes, I did have something I wanted to say.
Go for it.
Going back to what Linda said about how the country has always been divided, that's absolutely true. What's different is I was thinking about what's different during the conversation. And one of the things I thought of was like the fake news, like the complete breakdown of the institutions. Like people don't believe the news, people don't believe in the government, the people running the government don't believe in the government. It's like there used to be sort of rules that were sort of followed, like where you didn't just sling mud or you worked together because you had to. And it's like, to me, that's what's really changed is like all those rules in our particular country have broken down. I can't speak for other countries. So that we've just sort of been at loggerheads. But then I was thinking, the reason why all those things have broken down really is because of that thing, like you were saying with the dungeon thing, because you have so many people feeling like they're stuck in a dark dungeon. And then that goes back to the economic reality of wealth concentration at the top. And if you have like a sort of desperate populace, many of whom are just scraping by, there's no security of any kind. And even people who have more finances, who aren't the 1%, there's no security with that because people are losing their well paying jobs, and their houses and everything. Like the utter
And
lack
their
of,
health care.
yeah, the utter lack of concern for humanity, you know? Like there used to be a sort of social contract that involved full time jobs with benefits, and then that started falling apart. And I mean, it really is symptomatic of how the whole system has become corrupt by putting profits over people. Like money is involved in something it shouldn't be involved in. That was something that Neil talked about in this book. Money should not be in politics. Uh, Religion should not be in politics, whatever. And like culture, you know, does the well-being of humanity, like of the people, come under culture, or what sphere is that under? Whichever sphere it's under, it's fallen by the wayside as there's no concern, and the attitude is if people can't make it on their own, it's their own damn fault. And the funny thing is that even some of those are the people who are not being taken care of by the system, are supporting the people who are not taking care of them, you know anyhow. That's me, I'm always kind of bringing it back to the uh, economic aspect of things, probably because I did major in economics in college a long time ago, but I always see things through that lens. So over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really capitalism gone wild.
Yes, yes. And he said that too. It was like it was supposed to be a system for sort of exchanging goods. Like money exists so that we don't have to barter. And if I have a cow and you have a goat, that's fine to trade. But if I have a cow and you have eggs, and you don't want my cow, but it's like that's why money was created, but not so that it could be hoarded by the people at the top and make life impossible for the people at the bottom. It wasn't supposed to be. Capitalism wasn't supposed to be a tool of oppression. It was supposed to be a system that made things work for more people. So
But
that's
the real problem with it is that it birthed itself out of forgetfulness, because human beings are creative beings. And if we are, which I believe we are, divinity in form, then we ultimately never needed to create money to start with. That process occurred after we had forgotten ourselves. Because that's, if you look at the well, I don't want to, it's not a format, but if you look at the guidelines of law of attraction, the principle, that's the word, the principle of the law of attraction, it's based on energy, and energy flowing, and things flowing in the direction where they're desired and wanted, etc. That is an aspect of our creative ability, right? Because we are creative beings, it's like the law of attraction sort of explains how it works, but it doesn't explain how it works in the ultimate sense, because in the ultimate sense, when we are whole and in our divinity, we are creative beings and we want for nothing. And so it's like, well, when you get to a point where you're energetically blocked and you can't create as a creative being, then what? And that's what I think money was born out of. You know, like, man, I'm having a bad day. I really need some eggs, but nobody's come along to offer me eggs or whatever. So let me take a couple of these things and go over and see my neighbor and see if I can just get some eggs. Over.
I'm not saying that that's not true. I'm just saying that that's really irrelevant to the life of most people on Earth, on this planet at this point. I mean, yes, you can perfect your ability to work with the law of attraction. And there are a lot of people who don't even know it exists. So whether or not money was born that way or not, I mean, you and I differ on this point because I see money as a useful tool and you see it as totally a thing that, to me, like as you're talking, money was a creative solution to a problem that
Right.
people were having. And maybe they were having it because they fell out of line with their divinity. On the other hand, you know, in a sense, I really do feel like it doesn't matter. If I was in perfect unity, I could get everything I want. If there are still millions of people who can't, you know.
But see, I think the point is, by you getting to that place, then you make it possible for them, because they won't believe it or see it until they can see it. That's why what we've done to the teachings of Jesus and Jesus himself is such a crime. Because he wasn't saying, worship me because I can do these things. He was saying, y'all can do these things.
Right.
Why don't you all learn to do these things? And that's where we still are. We still are right there, you know, and every person that comes along that gets too powerful in the why don't you all do these things manages to get shut up by the people that don't want to hear it. So the only way we get through this is there have to be more people doing it than they can shut up at once.
I want to add something that's occurred to me. I mean, this is the first time I've thought about it, but
Mhm.
both you and Mary were talking, Linda. Just a minute. Somebody's knocking at my door. Yes.
So I have a question, which is, where is the good in what's happening? How can we put our focus on what's positive and the direction that we can actually see is showing up toward the unity? And how do we focus more on bringing that to light?
I think Byron Katie's quote is the most helpful. If you see anything in the world that's unacceptable, you can be certain your mind is confused. Right? So it becomes each of our challenges to find the good. Right? And if everything is a function of divinity, it's all good. That doesn't mean it feels good. It doesn't mean it looks good. But the first step is to let go of the judgment. Right? If you're divinity and I'm doing something you don't approve of, how do you deal with that? You have to just accept that you don't know everything about it. Right? That's what we have to do. We have to accept we don't know everything. We know what we know in our world. And if one thing that we know, which is everything is divinity, there isn't anything that isn't divinity. then there must be a reason these things are happening that divinity knows that we are out of the loop on. So rather than judging it bad, I suggest the approach is to work on getting in the loop. And getting in the loop in this case is to become the divine being that we are and function in love. Because there's no judgment when you're in love. So I'm not saying it's easy. It's very challenging. But you can look at absolutely anything that's happening and you can love it if you understand the divinity behind it. And that's where I think the word faith comes in. Right? People die every day, some of natural causes, some hideously, some from COVID. But the point is, if everything is divinity and everything is God in form, then I can't judge it. My job is to accept it. And if it brings something up in me, then that's for me to look at in me. Over. I don't know if that helped, Ian.
I agree with what you say, absolutely. That is the only way. And I have just an experience when I was living in a community many years ago, for some years, and we were running a school for kids. We lived about 30 people together. And regarding money, I mean, we were all spiritual, and it was fantastic. And we decided that every person's money, salary or whatever, should go into one account, and we call it the currency of love. And then one of the women there, she hold the control over it, and if somebody needed something, they could just go to her and they got the money for it. And we just gave. So when you went to the dentist, or if you needed to buy a coat or something like that, you could just go there and get it. And it was such a peaceful feeling that no one worried about money. And just to have that experience, it was just for 3 years, because then it sold up. We had to close the school and so on, so the community dissolved. But the feeling of have experienced when we were together in that feeling, and you could see when you looked at each other and we had food together and so on, the experience was so beautiful. So I'm very happy that I have had that experience. That's many, many years back. We ended 1999. So it's a long time back, from 96 to 99 it was.
Wow.
So it's a very good experience. So we didn't focus on money at all, but everyone had some income or something. So we just got it into the currency of love, we call it. So that's just an experience. But I agree that we have to take care of each other. I have to go to my source inside. And the more I do that, the more I connect with others doing the same. And then we create a field that is, we are the ones we have been waiting for. Yeah, over. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting.
Beautiful.
And one of the things I want to bring in, and I'm going to put everybody on mute while I'm talking because my Wi-Fi doesn't allow me to have everybody off mute. What I was thinking was, I was taking a class in world religions when I was in college, doing my undergraduate work, and I was getting a minor in philosophy with a focus on world religions. And it only showed me how much I still don't know. It always cracks me up when you're like even working on a master's degree, just because you have a master's degree does not mean you're a master. I never really understood that. But what I was going to say is we were doing this exercise where you could do anything you wanted to, but you needed to figure out um, things that were in common with one religion and another. But what I want to do, this comment, is if we take a circle and put the words human being in that circle, that's one thing we all have in common. But then you can go down a list of things like, oh, you shop at Safeway, so do I. So you do a circle that loops into that bigger circle with humans, and you put Safeway. And then you find out through conversation that you both happen to go to the same doctor. So you make another circle that loops into this bigger circle. You can say, oh, you go to the Catholic Church, so do I. And so you're going to have all these circles, infinity, because we have so much more in common than we don't have in common. And even though we're going through this hideous situation here in the United States, I can guarantee you that there are people who are Trump fans that I have a lot of other things in common with them. And if we can focus on these overlap into the humanity circle, then we can be this group of people saying, you know what? And you voted for Trump, that's your prerogative. But you know what? Let's focus on the fact that we both use this, we both go to the same church, we both have the same doctor, we both have the same model of car. It can be all these little things for jumping off points for saying, oh, we do have stuff in common. Even if you don't want, and I'm saying you in the big picture, you, even if you don't want to think that there's anything in common with yourself and somebody who's a Trump supporter, it's so not true. Because at the very base, we are all humans and we all do these things in our daily lives, like driving on the same street, or live in a house that looks a lot, the list goes on and on. But anyway, I was thinking that if we could get to a place where somebody somewhere would say, do this exercise and you will learn that you have things in common with people you don't agree with. Because we get into this pigeonhole of saying, well, you're anti-Trump, we have got nothing in common. And that's where we start to break down. Hope that made sense. Over.
The reason that it was troubling to me what happened was because this was a person that was on the same walking path with me. So we were aligned in everything as far as where we were holding things at that point in time. So to all of a sudden say, well, because you don't feel that, you know what I mean? So I'm just saying that we were in sync with everything else. We've been good friends for a long time. It's kind of like with the Civil War when brother turned against brother. They had a lot of things in common, but something else took precedent over that. Well, when you say we're in the unity should be holding us all together. And then the unity gets forgotten about. I don't know. Over.
I would like to say something if I could, because it's not that I disagree with what you say, Nanette, but it's like, here's where I feel like we need to think about the issue of privilege and marginalized people. And this is where I come up against a wall, because if the difference that we have is that you are saying that gay people or trans people don't have rights, or that it's okay for Black people to be murdered by the police, I got a problem with that. And those are, see, that's the thing. I feel like, in a way, I'm being asked to suspend my compassion and empathy for people who are suffering at the hands of other people by saying it's all part of the divine plan. And yes, I can see sometimes if you go up in 5D or whatever, like from that perspective, you can say people signed up for this, blah, blah, whatever. But there's a lot of discussion right now about the part where, you know, this spiritual talk about this stuff is kind of like, if you're the Black person whose father got killed by the police and you say, oh, well, he signed up for that, you know, it's like, it's a very denying of the experience of marginalized people to talk about this stuff the way it's traditionally talked about. And this is where I have a big problem with reconciling oneness with the suffering of individual humans. And when I look at people, this is where my big problem with Trump supporters comes in, because I feel like there's a lack of empathy and compassion for other humans. And that's hard for me. That's very hard for me to understand. And it's very hard for me to just kind of say, oh, well, that's how things are supposed to be in order to have this great awakening or whatever. I mean, okay, I see Linda, so please explain this to me in a way that is better for me. You know, but that's where I come up against a thing.
First of all, I never said they signed up for it, right? So there's a difference. There's a difference between understanding that everything is divinity and saying something like that, they signed up for it. To me, that sounds like spiritual bypassing. Because they may very well not have signed up for whatever is happening. You know, just because we came into form doesn't mean we signed up for everything that happens, I don't think. Right? We came into form, each of us came into form with the same overarching purpose: to create heaven on earth, to create the experience of heaven in a physical form, in a 3D world, to be able to experience what it's like to drink beautiful, clean water and breathe beautiful, clean air and look upon the myriad of creatures that exist on this planet. That's what we all signed up for. I don't think in any way, shape, or form that the rest of it is stuff that we signed up for. It's not that specific, right? So the quote from Byron Katie that says, you know, if you look at something and let me get it so I don't screw it up. If you see anything in the world that's unacceptable, you can be certain that your mind is confused. What it means, I believe, is that when we look at something happening, somebody doing something to somebody else, right? Let's use George Floyd, right? So when we look at that incident, if we look at it and we say that was wrong, it would seem like we're going right against what Byron Katie is suggesting. And yet I don't think we need to be, right? So I can look at what happened to George Floyd at one level, from a spiritual level, understanding everything is divinity in form. And I can look at that event and not judge it as unacceptable. Because look at it from the place of how it changed the world, right? How we're having conversations now that we never would have had that not occurred. So what world do we want to live in? Do we want to live in the world where that didn't happen? Or do we want to live in the world where that happened? And I think I want to live in the world where that happened, because now people are more awake. Now people are talking about it in ways they never did before. So yes, it was a horrible thing that happened. But was it unacceptable in the grand scheme of things? No. In the 3D world, absolutely. Horribly unacceptable. Should never happen again. Shouldn't happen to anybody. I don't know if that's helping to separate it out, Mary, or not. And I understand where you're coming from, because to stay friends with someone who voted for Trump is one of the most challenging things any of us can try and do, right? Because for most of us, or for many of us, when we hear those words, I voted for Trump, a whole bunch of things go on in our head, right? And we make all kinds of assumptions about that person. And that's really where the problem comes in, because, for example, I have a very dear friend that voted for Trump. I start going through that list, and I know that those things are not her. She's not racist. She's not this. She's not that. She doesn't think it's okay that he grabbed people. You know, I mean, so for my friend, her decision making led her to that place. She looked at the 3 pieces of wood on the floor and decided it was an arrow pointing at the wall. You know, a whole bunch of other people did it too. They were all wrong. But I'm not going to unfriend her because she made that mistake. On the other hand, if she was a person who was racist, who did think misogyny was okay, well, we wouldn't be friends. And if I had been a friend and then I found that out, well, then we're no longer, we can't maintain a friendship, because those circles that Nanette was talking about, the fact that we shop at Safeway and go to the same bank and doctor, aren't enough, right? They aren't enough to build a friendship on. Those are similarities. Those are things we can relate to. But I can't hold somebody in my heart as a friend who thinks it's okay to be racist or misogynist or, you know, all these things. I don't know if I'm making any sense here.
You make sense, Linda, and it helped what you said, you know, earlier, especially. I still have trouble with being able to vote for him when he did and said all the things he's done, and especially the second time after everything that's happened. You know, I have issues and I am working on them, but it's like, I've asked Trump supporters, like, if you don't agree with these things, then why did you vote for him? And nobody's ever answered that. And that's part of my issue, is that I tried, before the first time he was elected, I tried to have conversations with people, and their attitude was always, I can vote for whoever I want to, and I don't have to explain myself to you. And I'm like, that's absolutely true. But I'm trying to understand something. And if the people who are doing the thing I don't understand are none of them willing to help me understand, then that helped them get put in a little box too, you know? It's like, it's not all just me putting them in a box. It's, they help put themselves in the box sometimes. Anyhow, what you said was very helpful. Thank you.
And I just want to add one thing. When I started this isn't I just want to make clear that this isn't about who you voted for or who you stand for or something like this. This is more about the us or them reality, or anywhere where we're finding ourselves in this place of truly being in a place where we're truly divided and we're not working for the same thing, though we all want the same thing. We all want the same outcome, but the division won't allow us to create a way to get there.
I want to step in here. I understand what you're saying, and I also think it's a natural crossover from what you said to talk about something that's in our face right now. And it is in our face about the dichotomy of our leaders. And it's a frightening time, and I want everybody to feel comfortable about voicing anything they want to the situation.
Can I just say something in that spirit? Thank you for the spirit of this group, Bob Larrick. I apologize for getting it, but I was just working with the faith traditions, and I was just got off ADL's anti-hate campaign, and the issue I was trying to tell them is the issue of individualism as well as compassion, and the idea of individual human rights, the need to accept that we're all different in many respects, but the idea of good must come from evil, I think, is some of the things you brought up, and that we all need to be less hostile and hateful and more compassionate, as Mary was saying, and more inclusive, that we're all human beings with human needs, Maslow's hierarchy, etc. And shouldn't we be more, from whatever tradition we're coming from, the idea of just coming from a Christian Protestant service who was struggling with the issue of gay rights and acceptance, which they did accept, but was controversy and within all the faiths, and the idea of modernity and changing and perfecting the human condition, our American system experiment and our human experiment. And don't we all need to work with the divine in that spirit of a more compassionate and loving nature? So thank you for your loving nature.
Thank you. And we're running overtime, so I'm going to have Shabana do the closing here in just a moment. I think that this conversation could go on into next week's call easily, and I'm open to that if everybody else is, because I think we can bring in more of things that are said in the book. And I just want you to know, Mary, I certainly am not saying because you go to the doctor, the grocery store, in the same bank as somebody and they voted for Trump, that means you need to be their friends. So don't misunderstand what I was saying.
No, I know that. You're just talking about seeing our mutual humanity, which we all have. And my issue is that some of these people seem not to see the mutual humanity of other humans who are different from them. That's
right.
That's why they're so hostile and hateful.
And
why they're so hateful and hostile or hostile.
Right.
I also have a suggestion, is somehow if we can take this discussion and tie it back into the book and what Neil's saying, and see what we can do in having that be the connection about the discussion off of the principles and what we're reading, and to tie all this that we're feeling and seeing and saying, and see how it relates to what we're reading. And anyway, and tying it back to that. That's my suggestion. Which I think we are. I'm not saying we're not doing that.
I was going to say, I think we are.
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, I didn't want to miss them.
Without labeling the exact quote that Neil wrote about, but I think that we all are. And anyway, let's do the closing. or we're going to be here till tomorrow. We won't have to worry about next week. But Shabana, would you like to do the meditation?
Lord God, you know that the longest journey is the 18 inches from our mind to our heart. The only thing that matters is what Linda said, is each of us is divinity incarnate, and our responsibility is to heal ourselves by resolving the issues that trigger us. Our own hearts are our personal responsibility. Therefore, each of us is a leader within our own body and heart. So we thank you now that Anne is quite right. We need to be clearly tying our discussion to what's written in the chapter. And we thank you that all 9 of us here now are trusting you to combine our heart's desire to be the very best we can be, because this is leadership from the bottom up. And our meditation is making this intention a reality here, now, and in the future. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Shabana.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shabana.
Love you too.
Love everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
All
Thank
right.
you all.
Yep. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Nanette.
Bye-bye.
You're
Bye,
welcome.
Mary. We love you.
Everybody have a good Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Oh, yes, that's
Stay
right.
All righty.
Stay
Okay.
safe.
All right.
Safe,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
good and safe.
Yes.